All right. Morning, everyone. Welcome
Morning.
to December 6th, the second darkest morning of our meeting schedule. Let's go ahead and get started with public comments. Do we have any public comments for today? Nothing on Zoom. All right.
Just before we move on, could someone on the Zoom as read.ai meeting? I just need to know what your name is, please.
Make sure it's not Chat GPT
I
logging
think
in.
it's
the meeting.
AI meeting notes.
Is that what that is?
Yeah, I think
I don't
it
like this. Okay.
Is that something of yours, Simon?
This is the first time I've seen it. I don't know what that is. Okay. Well, I guess
What
we'll move on.
happens if can you like remove it if we're uncomfortable with it?
I can.
We'll put it in the waiting room.
Yeah, I'll put it in my waiting room.
Permanently.
We find out we needed it, you can always get it back that way.
Yeah.
It's in timeout.
Well, I could imagine like a member of the public that like needs subtitles, or do you know what I mean? But it seemed like maybe somebody would write that in the chat. I don't know.
Yes, or respond.
Like if someone needed captions, but I guess there's a function to turn captions on, so.
Yeah.
All right, well, I think we've got that figured out, so we'll move on to approval of the meeting summary from November 15th. Minutes from November 15th, sorry. I'll move approval of the minutes as drafted.
On second.
Thanks, Reed. Thanks, Laura. Any discussion on the motion? Okay, hearing none. All in favor of approving the minutes as presented, please say aye. Aye.
Hi.
Any opposed? And any abstentions?
Oh, Stan, I wasn't here.
Okay. Welcome back, Terry.
Yes, thank you.
Globetrotter that you are. All right, so we have extension from Terry, and that's good to go with those minutes from November 15th. Thanks, Simon.
Great.
Okay, on to our next agenda item for discretionary permit 24-08 for 88 Mountain View Road. Who'd like to take the lead on this one?
So this is a pre-app for discretionary permit at 88 Mountain View Road. For 88 new homes, for 39 new homes, and a community centre. It's located at the sort of Route 2A end of Mountain View Road. You may remember that the adjoining parcel to the east here is sort of known as the Sally's Way Michaud development, which got a permit for 14 homes recently. So they proposed two alternative layouts, each of which both have 39 units. So subdividing off the existing property, and then a layout which is basically a similar cul-de-sac arrangement with a community centre. And then one has a series of 1 and 2 family homes with a multifamily building, and the other has 2 multifamily buildings and more open space. We've got wetlands on both sides of the property. There, I believe, slightly unusual one, this one. Just out of interest, probably not that relevant to you guys, but this option 1 is being developed according to Maharishi Vastu architecture principles, which one of which involves having all the sort of principal elements, entrances facing east, and there's various other requirements like having fences around the properties and things like that. I don't know if we've got a few people in, so just before we launch into the conservation stuff, I don't know if you just want to introduce yourselves.
Sure, I'm Abby Derry. I'm here from Trudell Consulting Engineers, and I worked with the McCulloughs to develop the plan layout and put the application together. Lucy Thayer, our landscape architect, also at Trudell, is online. And she's responsible for the layout and making the rendering look nice, so everybody can review it. So she's here to answer questions, as am I. And then we have Jim and Lucy here as the applicants.
Hi. Everyone knows Jim and Lucy.
Yeah, Jim and Lucy McCullough
Yeah.
are here.
So I think the main 2 things here are the view shed and the wetlands. So in terms of the IOF prioritization, it's low. There's no wildlife habitat or rare, threatened, endangered species or unique natural communities, and is not farmland. It is within a scenic view shed. You can see it sort of covering the eastern portion of the parcel there.
And it's looking
So
from the west end of.
yeah,
Looking east.
Yeah,
yeah.
I took some photos from there when we were reviewing the view sheds recently.
Yeah, so looking from Mountain View Road, sort of basically towards the mountains, Camel's Hump in particular. So it is in the RZD, so development isn't outright precluded, but people should expect to have residential development in those view sheds, but it's about making site planning to try and minimize the impacts and integrate them. Ideally get into a situation where they're not outlined against the sky and sort of as best they can blend into the background created by the hills and the trees.
Is the view from the road to those locations? Is that the desired?
Yeah, so if you look, I mean, most of our views are from the road. We don't generally tend to protect people's private views from their own properties. So you can see that there's 2 maps here, one of which is from our online GIS, which is the top one, which shows the extent in the slightly easier to read fashion, and then the actual screen grab from the PDF, which shows where the viewpoints are, so you can see it going across the top half of the parcel there. So that's the view from Mountain View Road. So you can probably just about make out Camel's Hump there. You can see, I think that's showed house there, and that's the property, the existing single family homes. So it's sort of looking that way. And then we also have really it's pretty standard by now, which is the wetlands protection. So no development in the wetlands or their buffers, sort of a very limited amount of development you can do in there. And then one thing I know the Commission is always quite keen on is making sure they're demarcated on the ground so residents know where they are. So that's it. We've got some findings and recommendations which we can work through. So I don't know if Jim and Lucy or Abby, if you have anything you want to add to that?
I don't have anything to add to that, other than we, using the regs in place at the time, did a layout. We delineated the class 2 wetlands with our environmental scientist. Those are shown on the plan, so we don't have any other environmental work to do out here. The buffers are shown on the layout, and we're planning on avoiding all of those. I saw the note on demarcation, and we can talk about what the preferred method is, if it's fencing, boulders, signs. Regarding the view from Mountain View Road, I understand that to mean we don't block Camel's Hump, but if the buildings are low, and you can see over the top of them, then that might be an acceptable option.
Yeah, so I think the idea is that, where we end up with is that we try and integrate the buildings into the sort of backdrop
Mhm.
created by the trees and
Right.
the slope, which I think is what they did with the show element.
And what does that do? How does that, how do you work with the street tree requirements along Mountain View Road if you have a view shed to protect?
Yeah, so what happens is that the bylaw says that we normally require street trees on this road.
Mhm.
But the DRB can grant an exception where there's a scenic view shed. In this case, at the adjoining parcel from the showed, they didn't grant that exception. So they did require street
Okay.
trees.
Is that something that the Conservation Commission recommends? Or,
They can recommend it, yeah,
okay, and then the DRB can or can't?
yeah.
And, all right. Lucy Thayer from TCE, I think you're following along online. I just wanted to see if you had any questions about the view shed.
No, that was the one that I had. Thank
For
you.
the commission. Okay. Great. I just didn't wanna, we have their time right now, so I didn't wanna miss anything if we have questions. Jim or Lucy, did you have anything you wanted to add to explain to the commission what you're planning here?
So, the, Shasta Veda, the Vedic outlay of the project, as mentioned, all entrances are from the east into the buildings. Another one which plays into the momentary discussion is they're gonna be slab on grade. We want contact with the earth. So that lowers, for view shed purposes, that lowers the building profile by probably a couple of feet. And I think that's primarily important for the view shed up near the point of photograph. The land drops down, and in a matter of, did we time it? No. But in a matter of a few seconds at 30 miles an hour, 35 miles an hour, the trees in the background block the view of Camel's Hump. The trees that are way over, past on the east side of Sally's Way development. Because of you can see the contour lines dropping down, and you're familiar anyway that you're going downhill there. And so I think the combination of both of those things, I'm thinking about where that power pole is. The trees in the background mostly unhappily block the view of Camel's Hump. And they're blocking the views. Well, that's what trees do, isn't it? They grow. And because when I was a kid, that, they weren't that tall, neither was I. Oh, I'm getting shorter now, though. So those are two, I think, important things. I think street trees would exacerbate what view opportunities we do have there.
I just had a quick question.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to do with the findings or anything, but I was just wondering, I know with the Glacier property, we required a bike path, and I was just wondering if you thought about, or has anyone thought about continuing that for this property, or I can't remember if there's one for the adjoining.
Yeah, there's a multi-use path that runs along the south side of Mountain View Road, well, a desired multi-use path that runs along the south side of Mountain View Road, all the way from Old Stage Road to 2A.
Okay,
So the DRB we definitely would consider that as part of their
oh, I see, I was just curious.
recommendations.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Yeah, and that's something that they'll incorporate into the project. It's not as visible on the screen,
Mhm.
but it's right off the edge of the property line
Okay.
it's shown.
I have a question about, I'm not remembering exactly how the neighboring parcel was laid out. What was the final layout of that parcel?
going through the link.
So did we have them cluster the homes, or did we?
I
Is there
think,
wetlands?
so that's Mountain View Road on the left-hand side there. I think because of the wetlands for this parcel.
Yeah.
Sort of basically just dictated the layout.
It's pretty
Mhm.
constrained, yeah.
Yeah, so they're all on this side.
Yeah.
And so I'm surprised that, so the DRB did not request, or did not grant an exception for the street trees, so they're going to be required to put street trees?
Yeah,
Even though there is a view shed?
yeah.
Yeah, I think by the time you get down to that property, as Jim was describing, everything was gonna be in line with or below my recollection, the tree line. So adding street trees wasn't removing visibility of the mountains or,
So the view that was identified was more the fields and the trees, or that they designated, or?
it's from
So the-
up further,
So it's,
Oh, okay.
yeah,
the view is from Mountain View Road.
right, the bottom left corner.
I've got it here. So the view is from Mountain Road, you can sort of see it there.
Oh, I see
And
it.
the
Yes,
way
it's
it
right, I got
works
it.
is you have like a
in the
foreground, a
front.
middle ground and a background.
Yeah.
So this parcel we showed are the foreground. And then you start to get the trees as the middle ground, then the
Right.
background is the mountains way off in the distance.
So it looks like the view is from the middle of their.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, good.
Yeah, it's basically as soon as you can see the church on the left as you're going down Mountain View Road, if you were to look to the right, that's the view, that's that bottom arrow.
Okay.
Mhm.
Hey, Simon, Gary has his hand raised.
Okay, I just wanted to ask a question related to this viewscape. It seems like that's pretty important to us to figure that out. So I'm wondering if we can do some kind of modified rendering that would show the height of the buildings like we did in the Glacier project, that would just show, and therefore we could determine the impact of those buildings that are closer to the road, because it seems like they're being clustered in that area somewhat.
Yeah, I mean, so one of the potential recommendations that the committee can make is.
Oh, I see, it's there.
A visualization or rendering. I mean, just like my thoughts were that. Option 2, which is multifamily, sort of has a reduced impact on the foreground, simply because there are fewer buildings there and they're in the half of the parcel that's not the view shed. And like Jim indicated, it'll be these ones closest to the road and so closest to the view that will be important. And there's various things you can do. So you can look at, site planning, are they located in the right place, or you look at height requirements. You can also do things like low reflectivity materials, but I think that seems less desirable to me. So Janet Smith. So their hand raised. Do you want to speak?
Sorry, I was unmuted. The other aspect of this property is though that the current home that's there and that other site that's going to be lot 2 here. I don't, you can see my cursor.
It's okay, you can't put your cursor on it, but I think we're all looking.
So lot 2, in the project where you have the second large building where the smaller building homes are. Go back to that one.
Yeah.
Totally blocks the view for that, and then totally, that would, totally impact the value and the view from that place. Whereas the smaller ones along the road and the smaller ones there, where the second, the middle, the top, the west, the northern of the larger buildings wouldn't impact the people living on the property, as well as would be low enough to and spaced out enough along the road that they probably wouldn't have as much of an impact. Also, from Mountain View Road, the grandest view is actually to the northeast, not the southeast, because that's where you can see Mount Mansfield. Camel's Hump is at such a distance, it's very small. If you're standing on Mountain View Road, you can find it. But the real view at that point in the road where the property is really straight ahead and up to the left towards Mount Mansfield. So that should be considered, even though it's in the view shed. If people are driving along that road with their eyes on the road, paying attention to the extra traffic that's there, then they're probably looking straight ahead or as the road curves to the left. Thank you.
Okay.
Any other questions from the Zoom?
Nope, I don't think so.
All right, so we can go through the findings and recommendations.
Simon, did you, sorry, did you give us a estimate of what timing looks like? I know you said, I know this says potentially going to the development.
So they
Sorry.
either have to go through growth management,
Growth
or they
management.
have to meet the inclusionary zoning requirements. So growth management can be in March. And really it's their choice after they've been to DRB, which one they're planning to go through. They need to make that decision by probably March the 1st. I think in this case, there's probably a fair bit of engineering work to do, whereby that's not necessarily, like growth management isn't necessarily the main time constraint, because once you get through pre-app, you've actually got to do the work, so to speak.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, so findings, we have, as we've already discussed, this is in the residential zoning district. There's no quantitative requirement for acreage to be set aside as open space in this zoning district. There are varying quantities of open space. This parcel is identified as a low priority for conservation on the ERF map. There are not any desired trails in this area, with the exception of the multi-use rec path along Mountain View. I don't know if that needs to be included in here or not.
So the Conservation Commission is concerned with primitive trails.
Okay. There are, as we discussed, the primary foreground view shed impacts potentially to Camel's Hump. There are a number of wetlands in this parcel. And impacts to watershed health, because there's more than 2 acres that'll be disturbed from development. There is not any anticipated impacts to strategic wildlife habitat areas, rare threatened endangered species, unique natural communities, farmlands of local importance, or special flood hazard areas. Any other any comments or questions on the findings? Anything on Zoom?
Nope.
All right, so moving on to recommendations. First one is that the application shall show all wetlands and their buffers on the property and wetland delineation for the proposed development. That will come with the next phase. Is that correct? Okay. And then development must not encroach in watershed protection buffers other than exceptions listed in the bylaw.
So those are just crossings for utilities, access way or trails mainly. I think Abby just mentioned she'd be interested in your thoughts on how to demarcate. I know historically the commission's liked boulders.
We like things that can't be moved.
Boulders are permanent, semi-permanent, but and low maintenance. Fences are okay. I think signage, we generally try to sign it shy away from signage, just to reduce all of that potential impact on views and on the natural areas. But I think, yeah, boulders and are generally what we recommend or prefer, and then followed up by fencing if boulders are not an option. One question I had, I guess, on the just looking at more of the maps, the access road looks like it's crossing over the wetland area. Is that? See that correctly?
Hold on. I think that's a stormwater. I think that's a new thing they're
That's
building there.
proposed.
I just saw the blue. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Great. Okay, any other questions, comments on recommendation number 2? Okay, moving on to 3, submit a runoff erosion control plan. That's pretty standard for projects like this. Number 4, open space should be proposed as part of the project and shown on the site plan. And highlight all the wetlands and watershed protection buffer areas.
Is there a requirement for that recommendation, Simon?
There's no quantitative requirement like there is in the ARZD. The idea is you maximize it consistent with building to the allowed density. The only things it has to include are the wetlands and watershed protection buffers, which we do have, and very steep slopes, which we don't have.
Great.
Yeah, the other thing I've noticed is the difference in language from like recommendation 1 has shall versus should in recommendation 4.
Which
that-
might make sense, right? Shall is like when it's must, and should is when it's like a recommendation. Is that true?
Yep. Yep.
Yeah, it must include all the wetlands and watershed protection buffers.
Okay, so anything else on 4? Recommendation 5, requesting that a visualization or rendering be provided with a discretionary permit to show development impact on the view shed from Mountain View in the direction of Camel's Hump. This was also done for, I think it was the first time I've seen it. This is also done for the adjoining parcel, which we showed property, which was pretty. It was for us, anyway, I know it was added a cost to the project, but it was very helpful to visualize those impacts. Questions, comments on number 5?
Yeah, so I mean, my thoughts were really trying to get it. I mean, it's not very exact map this, but reasonably approximate to that, just show the development. Across for whichever option you pursue, discretionary permit and show that.
does the DRB, I know that you mentioned, Simon, that we typically look at this from the perspective of public access for view sheds. Does the
Yeah.
DRB take into consideration impacts on residences per the person's comment a few minutes ago?
No, they don't. We don't have a bylaw requirement to protect private use.
As a
Is there a
point, as a
way-
point of clarification, is this, it looks as though lot 2 is part, like the owner of lot 2 is also the owner of this development, and that they're sort of developing their own land. Do I have that correct?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, so, I mean,
Fair
from
enough.
that point of view, the, that owner's view shed is their own business at
Yep.
that point.
All right, thanks, David, for doing that research. Okay, anything else in number 5?
Oh, I'm sorry, I did have a question on number 5. It sounds like there's 2 options being developed. Obviously, that'll sort of sugar out at some point as to what option they're interested in pursuing. So obviously, we would want the visualization of, you know, the one they're planning to pursue.
Good
Yeah.
point.
Yeah.
Makes sense.
I mean, if you wanna go to the expense of developing 2 visualizations, then that's on you. What, so that doesn't bring up a good question though, David. When in the process do you make that decision, which direction you
Right.
wanna go? You're waiting for
Exactly.
feedback from DRB on that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Before discretionary, we would have
Before
a decision.
discretionary.
Yeah.
Okay. So in discretionary, you would be developing one plan, one visualization that you're moving forward with.
Yeah, okay.
Great, thanks.
All right, number 6, permit must demonstrate compliance with the scenic view shed and visual standards in the bylaws. Any questions or comments on this one?
Just emphasize the work with staff part.
Yeah.
Most of the work happens outside of the discretionary permit review session with the Conservation Commission. So
Can we make that should a shall? Are we allowed to? The applicant shall work with staff?
I mean, there's no, but, I mean,
Yeah.
number one, they're all recommendations at this stage.
Hmm.
And I think,
this is how it usually appears.
yeah, I would say should, I don't think,
It's in the applicant's best interest.
Yeah.
To work with staff. And not mandate it, but.
Yeah, I was thinking like what could be stronger than should.
but.
I like best
don't-
interest.
I mean, I think you need to start
Strongly
worrying about-
recommend.
You need to stop worrying about that at discretionary permit because the pre-app isn't. You don't really, you get views and recommendations of pre-app, you don't get stuff that you will hold someone to. That's
Mm.
what discretionary permit is. There would never, well, I say never, but there, you know, it's extremely unlikely there'd be some sort of court case about pre-app because it's not really granting them anything, we're not giving them anything here.
Okay,
So I have a question about, so on this point of preserving the view shed,
Yeah.
if the DRB does not recommend that street trees not be planted, then if they're planted, they're gonna lose the public will lose the view anyway, so unless they,
Well, I mean, street trees are once every 40 feet or something like that, or, so you do get views in between.
between, that's a short little, like,
Yeah,
you're saying you lose that view in such a short amount of time, so.
I
I'm
mean,
just
what,
curious
what,
on how-
what you can do is that for the show, they didn't put the street trees on until final plans. So they left it at discretionary permit and then the DRB reviewed the rendering and said, you know what, this site can handle street trees. So, you know, we could. I don't know how much that affects your engineering, Abby, but we could take that But yeah, it's difficult to tell, isn't it, until you see it in some ways.
Right.
Basically suggest that it be developed without street trees until such time as the DRB requests them.
Yeah, I was just curious, and then the point of that when you're driving on that section, which I'll do next time I go down there, is that you're really looking at Mansfield. The Camel's Hump is kind of
Secondary.
a secondary blip for just a short period of time, so.
Right, and I think this will come back here before discretionary.
okay.
So at that time, you would make your recommendation, street trees or no street trees to the DRB,
Yeah,
and they would take that into consideration.
When you go to do your rendering, I imagine you're gonna see the answer,
Yeah,
as you
Hmm.
compare it.
Anything else that folks want to bring up or concerns they want to share for the recommendations? I'm on Zoom.
nope, I don't think so.
I'll move approval of the recommendations as drafted.
Thank you, Reed. Do I have a second?
Second,
Yeah, I think I heard Gary first on that one. Sorry, David.
it's okay. I'll get you next time, Gary.
Yeah. All right, any discussion on the motion to approve as presented? All right, all in favor, please say aye. Aye.
Hi.
Aye.
Any opposed? And any abstentions? All right. Motion carries. Thanks, everyone.
thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right.
We hope to see you tomorrow night.
Perfect.
Yes.
That's it.
Look over there. Okay, moving on to our next pre-application for 1318 Butternut Road. 2 minutes behind schedule here, sorry about that. What do we have going on for this one, Simon?
Okay, Abby's here for
This
this one.
one too?
I'm here too, yeah.
Okay.
Oh, okay.
Oh, yeah, not leaving, I'm just watching.
And we have the applicant here as well. For those you weren't here, first thing.
Good morning.
So 1318 Butternut Road, in the ARZB. You can see it there. This is pre-application review for 3-lot split of a 10.4 acre parcel to create 2 additional homes. I think the applicant has 1 home on there as well as a barn at the moment. I think sort of used as pasture for horses, from what I can tell. Great plan. As the project is not construction more than 4 homes, it's exempt from growth management. And it's less than 10.5 acres, so it's not subject to the open space protection provision. 3 things mainly here. So first thing is it's got a medium value on the ERF prioritization map. You can see it joins a conserved parcel there to the east. There's a desired primitive trail that runs along the property line, but we already have an easement for that section. And it is not actually on our official map. So I think there seems not much value in extracting another easement in this case. It does have a sort of fraction of significant wildlife habitat area on it, which you can see in the sort of top right corner of the property there. So if we just look at the site plan, I don't know how well this will show on the screen, but this here is the sort of existing property along with the barn. So and there's no development proposed there, and the strategic wildlife habitat area is sort of round in the top corner. There isn't any on the rest of it. Probably wasn't mapped because it was open pasture. So that sort of links with the travel corridor, which runs off towards the north there, and the big bank of core habitat and the conserved parcel to the rear. So because there's no development, I've suggested no requirement for an HTA there. None of the UEATs, UNCs or farmland. So it is within an area mapped as secondary viewshed. The viewpoint is quite far away, 1 mile away on the Butternut Road Route 2A intersection. I actually went out there to have a look at how visible this was
Okay.
for such a small development and took that picture. And it took quite a long time to figure out where the parcel was. From there, because it is, there are a lot of trees and I'm not really convinced that you can see this parcel from the viewpoint. So I had a look at it there, so my opinion was I wasn't overly concerned about the impact on the view shed there, but we can talk about that a bit later. And then lastly, I think there are some wetlands on the property, so same deal as for 88 Mountain View Road. I think the wetlands they are in the developed area of the parcel, unlike the strategic habitats, so they do come down and run around the back of 2 of the lots. So that's where we are. Does anyone, is that too quick or has everyone got a good thought about? Want to add anything to that, Abby?
No, I don't. It's a 3-lot subdivision, single family homes on a 10.5, just under a 10.5 acre lot in the district. Anna Benedetto is here as the applicant, and we've delineated the class 2 wetland that's shown on the plan this summer. And we did soils test pits to see if there's septic capacity. There is, and this is what the parcel can support. There's no tree clearing proposed. It's in, the new areas are shown within the existing pasture.
Okay. Any questions or comments before we get into the findings and recommendations?
Whoops, a question on, if you could just go back to the map, and I'm sure there's reasons for it. And I read in the small little print, the parcel with the long driveway. There must be a reason why the house isn't closer to the road instead of having that long driveway and kind of pushing it to the back of the parcel. Was there a reason for that? Because we're trying to.
Yeah, this had to do with where the soils were on the site and keeping the home away from the septic area. The narrow portion of the property up closer to the road, there's a dashed rectangle. That's where the septic was. It's a little bit flatter too.
Okay.
Toward the back of the property, flatter being relative.
How long is that driveway? It's just hard to.
It is 100, maybe 300 feet.
Yeah, just the thought of the cost of putting in a driveway, the cost of maintaining it or plowing, and we're trying to, the Conservation Commission is trying to avoid long driveways and, you know, breaking up habitat. If everything was closer to the road, it would leave more room for wildlife corridor, things like that. And the boundary kind of cuts in, that must be, is that the well? Right,
Yeah.
There, yeah.
that well, but then the other well is, right there, is that the other well?
Other questions or comments? Right, so we can take a look at the findings. Something on Zoom.
No.
Findings. Okay. So as we mentioned, this was not subject to the open space requirement, because it's under 10.5 acres. Medium priority for conservation on the ERF map. There's a desired trail through this area, even though it's not on the official map. We do have an easement on the adjoining property for this desired trail. It contains strategic wildlife habitat area. All right, just the wording of that, the way that one's worded looks a little odd to me.
Yeah, it should say significant wildlife habitat area, yeah.
And that's the portion that's in that upper right hand.
Yeah. It's kind of hugs that.
Yeah.
Top right corner.
It falls within the secondary middle ground viewshed area, contains class 2 wetlands. It's considered high risk development for watershed health because it will disturb greater than 2 acres. Not anticipated to impact any uncommon, rare, threatened, and endangered species, unique natural areas, farmlands of local importance, or special flood hazard areas. Any questions, comments on findings? Okay, recommendations. So the first one is that the site plan shall show all the wetlands and buffers with wetland delineation around development. So they should look pretty familiar to the last project.
And the water, could you make that a little larger?
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah,
My
it's
eyes are
not
not
great.
Yeah, thanks.
You could also fix the projector, that'd be great.
Simon, I have a question.
Sure.
Why is there not, or maybe I'm missing it, the same open space delineation for this applicant as there was in the last one? Is that like an acreage issue or because it's in the rural area?
So they're doing like a traditional subdivision, which is classified as an infill development because it's less than 10.5 acres. And when it's infill, they don't have to set aside open space at 75% as a platted lot. And I think the idea is because it's quite difficult to do that with the small parcels, but because the lot sizes are so big at 1.84 acres, and you're just building one home in it, you sort of get the open space anyway because you just don't take up that much room, and it spreads it out and makes it feasible for people to develop these small parcels. For McCullough's property, they were less than 10.5 acres, but they're not developing as an infill pattern because they're not doing what you traditionally think of as a subdivision where everyone has 1/3 of an acre lots, because they wouldn't be able to achieve the required densities. So they're developing using an open space pattern, which means they do the open space, but they don't have a percentage requirement. So if you think about McCullough's, they've got 10.5 acres, well, just under 10.5 acres. So if they developed as an infill pattern, they'd have to give every single home 1/3 of an acre lot, which means they'd only be able to develop to 30 units, and they wouldn't be able to do that because they'd have to plat all the roads and things like that.
Yeah. Thanks. That helps.
All right, any other questions on recommendations 1 or 2? 3 is pretty standard also, requires a runoff erosion control plan. And then 4, as Simon described, a habitat disturbance assessment is not recommended since there is no construction proposed in the significant wildlife habitat area. And a trail easement is not required.
I like question about the trail easement aspect is, I just don't know what it's like on the ground there, and I know at times we've had trouble finding like a suitable placement for trails in the past, so I just wondered whether we should be at least considering whether it's more feasible to have a trail on the other side of that property line from from everything I could see on there, it's relatively flat and the same on both sides of that property line, but I didn't know if, I don't know if you have any thoughts about that, from your perspective. That, some of the homes are pretty far back.
Yeah,
And so having a trail through there would be pretty close to the homes. I know that's also
they're far back, but they're pretty spread out, so it depends. I mean, ideally with the trail, it'd probably be wiser on the first side, you guys.
there's a lot more space on that side.
Yeah, because the other side, it's basically my property and then my neighbor's property, and it's only separated by a few trees and a pasture that I gave back to them because it was originally theirs.
Sounds like there's an entire conserved parcel.
Yeah.
Is that the Bruce property? Yeah.
I think if I'm, correct me if I'm wrong, Abby, but isn't there a wetland that runs along the property line?
There
as
is,
well?
yep. Yeah, this is this is the boundary of the class 2 wetland, so
Okay.
this is wetland.
Then I'm content. I just wanted to at least think about it.
Any other questions on the findings and recommendations for this project? Anyone on Zoom?
I don't think so. No.
Nope.
Right, and may I have a motion to approve these findings and recommendations as presented?
I'll make a motion to do so.
Thank you, Laura. May I have a second?
One second.
Thank you, Terry. Any discussion on the motion? All right, all in favor of approving the motion, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? And any abstentions? Motion carries. Great. Thank you very much.
Right. Thanks for your time, everybody.
Thank you.
Was it official use of your time?
I know.
Abby?
No, I gotta, like, get to my other
Super
job.
That comes later.
The horses got woken up a little extra.
Oh.
So they weren't happy. Well, maybe they were.
They were like content, they're like, oh, we get breakfast early, that's great.
We have a conservation event tomorrow night at the town hall if you're interested. It's at 6:45.
Good to know.
We'll be talking about
Awesome.
celebrating conservation. So if you'd like to come,
Yeah.
There's cake.
there's
Oh,
cake.
boy.
Cake and nuts. That's our thing. That's right.
Thank you so much.
Have a good one.
Thank you. All right, next up is the ERF memo. So we've got some yellow highlighted text here, which I think is what needs to be turned into bullets, correct?
Yeah.
Okay,
I confirmed it's. Yeah, that we can go on.
all right. You're pulling it up.
Yeah. And it's just. Had a lot of windows open. So it's,
That's my natural state. Yeah, I'm like, hey, which window is it in? At one point, I had like over 100 tabs open in my browser at work, and every time I got a meeting, everyone was just like, why? I was like, because I need some of that stuff that I haven't gone through them to post them now. Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay. So I guess what I would suggest, Simon, is if, we take 10 minutes, get us back on, did I close the agenda? Darn it. Which one is it? There we go. All right, 8:20. So, take 20 minutes and, let's see if we can get this thing into shape with some bullets. I do not have edit access, so I'll really defer to you, Simon.
Just gonna be our editor in chief.
Yeah. So first bullet, would be, we request $150,000 be allocated to the Environmental Reserve Fund for the fiscal year 2025 budget. Which, given what I'm already hearing about budget tax increases, we'll see how successful that is.
Yeah. School stuff.
Yeah.
There's always something.
All right, so that's our request. And then we have justification for it. So I think the second one would be that second yellow highlight. The Conservation Commission firmly believes that one of the key services the town provides to its residents is the conservation of land.
Yeah, can that just stay like exactly?
Yeah, I think you can just copy and paste it.
Yeah, it can't be said much better than that.
Conservation.
Yeah, maybe next one is conservation, conserved land. Provides multiple benefits. And do we at some point list with
The third paragraph is a nice list of different benefits. So I would say including.
Right.
Yeah, including sustaining our agriculture community, working lands, protecting wildlife habitat and scenic views. Improving water quality. And maintaining the sense of place that Williston residents value.
Anything about recreation there? Okay.
Yeah, something like that. Physical and mental well-being
Yeah, I think
thing.
that's, yeah.
This one it's all good stuff.
We could just, could we just
no.
say ecological and social benefits, ecological, economic and social benefits or something like that?
Yeah,
Yes, I like that better.
yeah,
I just texted this to Eric, but Ben and I forgot that we have a Zoom with Nico's teacher in like 5 minutes. So I'm gonna like mute and jump over and then I'll be back.
Okay.
It's not long.
So Simon here, can you hit, I think we're going to probably get rid of all that, okay?
Yeah, because it's down in the paragraph format, right?
That's fine. I was gonna suggest sub bullets, but that's fine. Okay, so funds in the ERF are a powerful leveraging tool. Let's say that one.
The ref.
The ERF leverages additional resources for the town to help conserve these lands. Something like that.
So say that again? Yeah.
additional.
I don't know, you'll have to go back to the recording.
I have a suggestion about that, which is the entire thing is about funding the ERF, so I think that piece might be more intuitive for the select board than they probably are not familiar with the actual numbers.
Right.
So I would recommend something more like $1 funded to the ERF historically has led to $2 in or whatever.
Three, it looks like three, or now more than $2.
Yeah,
How about
yeah,
that?
more than $2
$3.
in returned value when used for conservation, something like that.
You could leave the fact that it says a powerful leveraging tool and then add in, for example, or something like.
Has led to more than $2.
Yeah, has led to, yeah.
Conserved value for each dollar funded. I think highlighting that we've spent $2 million through the ERF is not as attractive.
Yeah.
To
Yes.
the select board as it is to say that each dollar that goes in has tended to result in more than $2 of value.
Agree.
It's pretty hard to get 100% return on any investment, but we're getting that with this, so.
Okay. We have the next paragraph, the ERF has been used by a town to conserve numerous important parcels, and we have a note, these paragraphs through short bullet and explanatory text at end of memo. What were we thinking here?
I think it was, is it the three paragraphs below?
Two, three, maybe.
Or was it the three above? Oh, shoot.
All right, well, let's keep moving forward. Do we need to have a bullet? I don't know that we need to have a bullet that covers that paragraph, that the ERF has been used by a town to conserve numerous important parcels, unless we want to say something about the number of acres, which we haven't yet.
It's 256, something like that.
22,252 acres have been conserved, or a little over 10% of the land area.
225.
And that's what we had in last year's memo. I don't think we haven't anything this year.
Conservative expense.
And then, but then it's important to highlight that state law, which is not in here because it was new this year.
No, I think we put a note, the Vermont goal 30 by 30.
Right. So we need to, what was that law number? Act 147 or something like that?
Do we not agree that it's like this is a target rather than a law or something?
Right, it's a goal.
Yeah.
But there was an act. Sorry, Nico's
There
t-shirt
was.
is not ready yet, so I'm still here.
There was, and come on, where is it? PPR failed me. All right, well, anyway, we could say something like Vermont State Act number requires that, I think if that's what it says anyway, requires that 30% of the state lands or
Kim just send it to me, sorry.
right, 30% of the land in the state should be conserved by whatever the date is.
Oh, I had the thing open, I can. Right. The Community Resiliency and Biodiversity Protection Act of 2023 sets a goal for the state to permanently conserve 30% of all land by 2030.
Okay.
And a goal of 50% by 2050.
Can we say, or maybe it's too much, that that's in keeping with also global and national targets? Because a lot of countries
Yes.
signed on to the 30.
It's not too.
I don't know.
I think that
Might-
might be
yeah.
good to include in the descriptive text down below.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay, good idea.
Yeah.
And in that descriptive text, I think we want to say something like, you know, we don't expect Williston to conserve 50% of our land. But like Simon dropped into the bullet part, you know, we should be playing a role to help meet that goal. Role that's consistent with a suburban area in Vermont. The expectations for some suburban area.
This should seek to play a role in helping meet the state target.
Yeah.
It's one of the main questions I want to get feedback from people on tomorrow is what should our end state percentage be? What do people think is appropriate for a town in Williston's location and with the population pressures we do have here, people want to live here.
All right, the last thing we have highlighted is it's a good target to work on more than one parcel at a time. So I think that's, you know, this last bullet should emphasize the goal to achieve a target balance, ERF balance of $800,000 to allow us to work on multiple priority parcels simultaneously.
Something I found yesterday when I was researching other things was that the ERF policy says right in it here that the concept of the ERF is to provide a ready source of money that enables the town to respond quickly to opportunities to acquire land, development rights, or easements consistent with the intended purpose of the fund, or to proactively acquire significant natural and recreational resources. The phrase a ready source of money is the critical piece that the money has to be in there when the opportunity arises. We can't go ask for it, you know, it happens, so, yeah.
Hence the name reserve fund.
Yeah, yeah, it should be funds held in reserve, yeah. Okay, where are we?
I guess that down below in the text, it states that, yeah, there's no control over when two parcels would come up. I mean, it hasn't happened, has it happened before? I don't.
If
But
you
it
count
could.
Catamount and Glazer, they were, I mean, not that far apart. I mean, we finished with the Catamount one and then Glazer came up within a year.
And the money was depleted in the fund.
Yeah. So I don't know, we've had two at the exact same time per se, but we've had them sequenced in such a way that we were left with no funding.
And I remember the mud pond, that was a big concern with the Conservation Commission, was that donating that money would bring the fund down to pretty low levels. That's a big concern.
Okay. What do we have there? Half dozen bullets, 6 bullets? Okay, so I think that's pretty good. And then I would say, take our opening 2 sentences, the Williston from last year, the Williston Conservation Commission is advocating for the ERF support and proposed 2025 operating budget. those two sentences, move them above the bullets. And change that 100,000 to 150,000. What we are missing from this is the point about how property costs have increased and this town is not contributing, is not factoring that into the contributions to the ERF.
Do we have any update on charting the relative cost versus the value that's been funded?
Simon and our appraiser person did some work on that.
Yeah, I haven't had time to put them into current values. I think that's what we're talking about, changing the changing one of the figures to be I think it was the appropriations to be in $23.
Yep.
So like when they put in 100,000 back in 1990, you know, what is that in 2023 terms?
Yep.
I think that visual would be very helpful.
There's another, I was talking with Chapin about this, there's another way that might actually be easier to do, which is take the total grand list value in each year and show the funding as a percent of the grand list value. Because the grand list value will show you those fluctuations in on average, the fluctuations in land value. You could also do it as a percentage of the budget. What was the budget year over year? And as a percentage of the budget, what was the appropriations for the for the ERF? Those are other ways that could be likely will show the same trend and are consistent year over year, not take into account the change in value of things over time.
When does this memo have to be sent over to the?
Well, our goal was to get to Eric in like October.
Oh, right.
Right. I
It's
dropped
last
that ball.
October, right, okay, but and we have to have it by,
Well,
I mean, we
January.
don't have to do this,
Right.
so
we should.
yeah.
Must,
Yeah.
should, shall.
yeah, the hearings for the budget have already been put on the calendar for the select board, I believe it. The transfer of the, I'll have it up still, the transfer of the memo or the draft budget from Eric to the select board, I think either has happened or is about to happen.
Because like somebody mentioned earlier, the taxes, you know, the increase in taxes is coming up and, you know, this again might fall to the wayside again to be one of the things that could be set aside for another year. So.
All right, just about out of time on this. So what can we do? Simon, do you think you might be able to have time to work on those figures for our next meeting?
Yeah. Okay.
I also got an email from Simon last week with, or maybe that was the week before. Been incredibly busy, so I apologize, but I haven't had a chance to get into it. So Simon, I may reach out to you once I start opening up and understanding these spreadsheets.
Yeah.
Okay. So our next meeting is December 20th. So hopefully we can knock this thing out there and maybe look to submit it to the town after our first meeting in January of next year.
Yep.
Okay, good goal. All right, next up is Town Plan Chapter 12 review. I did, per my usual, drop in some comments in this thing late last night.
Okay.
All right, so chapter 12 is the watershed health chapter for the town plan.
People,
Starting off with stormwater management.
yeah, so stormwater management, there's a lot of, so my thoughts when reading this is by far the most detailed chapter that we've done, and I think that's just, I sense people were flagging as they were walking through this, given their responses, because it is really, it really is complex, this, and very detailed. So we'll see how far we get, which is good. It's good that the town's already done all that work. Yeah, so stormwater management, I guess a lot of support there, for it. Couple of things I thought were interesting, to move beyond just thinking of stormwater as the quantity is X, so that's what we need to deal with, and look at what can we do with these retention ponds. And then I think, generally throughout this was more, the need for more sort of education and, outreach on the matter. So the actual objective was basically just to keep doing what we're required to do under the legislation.
If you could scroll back up for a second, the third comment there about going beyond stormwater, or to get stormwater infrastructure, go beyond just managing inflow and begin to address invasive species and habitat quality of retention ponds.
That's me.
So you're thinking like
I like that.
Phragmites in the retention ponds with invasive species?
Right, I mean, addressing Phragmites is a monstrous task. But it may not just be Phragmites. I think just basically assessing whether the town can play a role in improving the quality of habitat provided by retention ponds, as opposed to just, is the retention pond there and can it handle enough water? That's
Yeah.
the idea.
I like that idea. I don't know if you remember that someone came to the commission a few years ago and said, you know, I've been watching the insects and the birds and everything at this retention pond, and then it was all mowed down. And
Is that a Maple Tree Place?
I don't remember.
Huh.
Yeah,
Like when it was redone, or,
no, they just decided to mow around it.
Yeah.
The retention pond.
So I think that's worth a conversation for sure, and then in clarifying our understanding of the role of the retention pond. The first and
Right.
foremost are there to reduce the amount of stormwater flowing into Allen Brook or Winooski River or wherever. But secondary benefit, there's certainly secondary benefits to that, which is removing pollutants like nutrients, for example. And then ways to do that is to improve the biotic integrity, the plants and things that are living in the pond. So I guess, and so it's a matter of articulating our expectations for the retention ponds and what they're going to do. They're never gonna be, we should never expect to see brook trout living in those things.
No.
For example.
my thought was less about like trying to say what to do and more that the next town plan should say that we should assess what could be done to
Mhm.
improve habitat, or ecological services, beyond the specifications of stormwater pond.
I like that idea.
That could include a kind of a best management plan too. So I know, as you were saying, Eric, there are conflicts between some of the values. I mean, keeping woody plants down is a good thing for some of the stormwater things, but not as good for wildlife or things like that.
Yeah. So I don't know what the answer is, but it's felt like there might be something. And during the next town plan period, which is how long?
Yeah, 8 years.
So in the next 8, so in the next 8 years, it felt like we probably should at least look into it.
Mhm.
So is there any follow-up on all these stormwater ponds that are in different developments and things? I mean, there's, you know, Taps Corner, you can, they're very visible, you can see them.
The town now is responsible for many of them, right, because of the agreement where the HOAs, many of the HOAs had to upgrade them in order to meet the new standards, and then the town would take them over from there.
So that means that we can work with that in the town plan and
It probably means the partnership between Public Works and the Conservation Commission to establish best management practices. That's my guess, but
Is there something that the state has already written up about maintenance and?
that would be a good place to start.
that would be a good place to start. And again, I think it comes back to looking at the goals for the retention ponds.
Right, they can be good habitat. For wildlife.
Yep. All right, cool. What was next? Okay, so I was reading this last night. I'm thinking, okay, I can understand this because this is what I do for a day job, but does anybody else really know what a municipal small separate stormwater system within the general permit for MS4s is? So I was just thinking, all right, this, I understand the point of this one, maybe we can rewrite it to help a lay audience understand what the objective actually is saying.
Yeah.
And at 11 o'clock last night, I was not in the right frame of mind to do that rewriting, but happy to work with you at some point down the road.
Yeah.
Do we own this one? It kind of seemed like the kind of thing that Public Works would write for, which this is what they would write, because to them, this is what it means.
And isn't Christine like in charge of this?
Well, we've got a new stormwater coordinator now, Lisa, her name is.
Okay,
So she's in charge of stormwater management. Christine moved up to be deputy Bruce.
Yeah, she's the assistant director now.
Yeah.
And then my other comment on this one was just, as it's written, accessible to a lay audience or not, it's just restating what's already mandated by state law, so that really the objective is to meet state regulations for stormwater.
and what is that?
Yeah.
And that's
Right.
very
I mean,
likely.
that's like a common theme, meet state regulations for groundwater, meet state regulations for storm protection. And we just,
I don't know, maybe that's okay, I just wanted to call it like it is.
yeah, maybe you condense just all that stuff into a page or two, and then have some objectives where the town might want to go a bit further, in terms of best practice, that we just talked about.
I know later on, it gets into, monitoring the streams and things like that in the brooks and all that. But really, the Conservation Commission doesn't have, because the La Rosa plant, program went away. We are not really doing anything about streams, and it's really all the DPW.
For monitoring,
Yeah, monitoring and just knowing what this.
And
Data
DPW plans
development.
to resume monitoring, but not until the period that was recommended. There was a recommended period, something like for the first 5 years. There is,
Yeah,
it takes at least this
Yeah.
long to see the changes.
Well, Christine, because we had that presentation with Christine about this time last year, she said, I think the state said there's no point in monitoring, because all this stuff you've done, it's gonna take 5-6 years to bear fruit, so all you're gonna get is data saying it's still a problem. And in 5 years' time, when all these solutions have worked, hopefully you'll get data that says.
So all those things we've done include,
I think it's
Building
made by, they
reservoirs.
upgraded like 25 stormwater
That's
systems.
all those HOA
Yes.
ponds that we're talking about, yeah.
Yeah.
okay.
and the planting, the buffer plantings along.
Right.
Allenbrook over there by the school and up here behind the town offices and all those, and that gets to one of my comments later on is a lot of those buffer plantings along Allenbrook, particularly over by South Ridge and the school fire department are now approaching 20 years that they've been in place. Not quite, but within the window of this town plan, they will hit their 20-year anniversary or birth date, planting date. And that's now finally getting into that window where buffers like that are maturing and should be having an impact on the quality of the habitat and the waterway. So that was one of my comments farther on is, maybe we can build in something to take a look at how those plantings are doing and whether or not we're starting to see an impact. I don't know if that means going out and collecting water samples or doing a more biological type of assessment to look at woody debris recruitment into the river or what. Something like that to just acknowledge that it's been 20 years now since this town started doing these plantings and let's take a look at what's happening with it.
Is there any way to, since the town doesn't really have those resources, to partner with UVM or St. Mike's or,
Yeah,
other
and
programs?
that's another, I don't recall where in here in this chapter, but there is a objective in here that says that we should work with students in at university classes to get some of this work done. And that's, we could keep that in there and
Even the school kids at Four Winds, I'm sure they could probably, maybe, do something.
Yep.
Have some.
They've been doing fascine, work with Chapin through Four Winds, going out and learning how to plant fascines.
Yep.
And those are the. cuttings.
The cuttings that are staked in dogwood, other things that, and they have more, a faster effect because they're like woven. They're almost making like a fencing.
Oh, yes.
And so it like slows down the water flow right away and then it grows. It's like a living dam or a living filter
Yeah.
for the water.
All right, stream restoration.
So use of volunteers. Again, education about buffer zones and what makes streams healthy.
The drone footage that has been taken recently of Ellenbrook, I think it's like, you could go out and spend 10 hours physically trying to check on the plantings and stuff, and with a drone, in 1 hour, you could do all of
Oh,
them.
that's fantastic.
So it's something, I think, maybe there's something here to be said for like explore ways to use technology such as drone footage to
Explore purchasing a drone.
Yeah, who
Yeah.
did the drone?
well, or a partnership with somebody who has a drone,
Yeah.
right? Yeah,
Who did the drone work that you're referring?
it's a Williston resident.
Yeah,
Oh, okay.
James Helps, his name
There's
was.
two of them.
Yeah.
One has a drone and one had interest in, anyway, they've done 2 rounds of taking drone footage of the Allenbrook.
You guys did pretty good with your GoPro. How do you think you'll do with this?
Yeah, well, I wouldn't mind having a go with
Drone?
a drone. But I think, these guys have done a great job. They did it completely unprompted. I just met them on the trail with Chapin one day and we were talking about it and he just sent me the footage.
That's great.
Nice.
Yeah, that's a
There's
good
also-
way to identify encroachment too. You notice some encroachment when you drive around, but from drones, it would be much easier. Yeah.
Yeah, there's also, going back to the using students idea, at UVM at least, maybe some of the other colleges too, there's like UVM has their spatial analysis lab with lots of various drones, a lot of high-end drones that they do that work as well, so that could be there's opportunities there too, to recruit a class or
Yeah.
whatever to do that, help us out with some of that.
I think an analysis of, restoration plantings as well as encroachment, to your point, Gary, would be a good objective to have.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it seems like it's a way to really do it inexpensively and quickly.
Um. Sorry, I lost my thought. So can we make a note of that?
Yeah.
That last one, okay.
Explore new ways to monitor.
Yeah.
Well, monitor, which I think is an existing goal, and explore new technologies
Yeah,
to do it.
do that work, and
Yeah.
particularly, I think, I like the idea of, something focused, like looking at encroachment as well. So there's the regulatory piece, looking at encroachment on the buffers, but then just how are an assessment of how the plantings and buffers are doing.
Yeah, you could probably even do like a very high level one using GIS and LiDAR.
Yep.
Or the aerial photography rather, because some of that is very detailed. They can figure out.
For the regulatory piece, yeah.
Yeah.
I don't recall, the LiDAR, I don't recall when LiDAR was a lot last flown.
Yeah, that's the issue with LiDAR. It's expensive too.
Is,
I think the state does it every now and then, so we just use theirs, or we'd use their aerial photography. You know.
Yeah.
Aerial photography from 2004 versus now.
yeah, okay. Okay. What's next?
Water quality monitoring.
I'm back.
Welcome back. We are looking at the watershed health chapter of the town plan. Which I've lost track of where we are though.
We're at 12.2 stream
12.2.
restoration. So we're talking about continuing to monitor, get Allen Brook out of the impaired waters list, which sounds from I reread our presentation from last year from Christine. So sense I got was we're getting there. But it's something complicated, like the lows are too low and the highs are too high for the mean flow.
Yeah.
Which creates all sorts of problems.
That's not unique to Albrook.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess maybe the lows weren't too low this year, but.
Yeah.
Did I read somewhere that it's really the last 7 miles of the Allen Brook? It's not the entire,
That's impaired.
that's impaired.
Yeah.
So there's just, and that's,
Oh, yeah,
that runs through Task Corner too.
it would be probably from like right here on down to the Winooski outcast. Upstream from here, there's not a lot happening.
Right.
That would
It's tiny tributaries feeding. Yeah.
Okay, so I'm just looking at these comments. Beaver management, yeah. Sorry,
So I have a comment on beavers. So every time beavers are brought up, I get this feeling that everybody laughs. And it's like a joke. So I don't understand what it is about beavers, but I know there's a lot of issues, and I think you wrote, people either love them or hate them.
Yes,
But
yes.
they do provide a really good source of what's the phrase saying slow the spread or something like that, to where beavers are actually helping.
Let the water sink
flooding.
in, yeah.
Yeah, to sink the flow, to stop flooding. of
Like putting check dams in your
towns
stream
and-
to
Right,
slow down your stream.
so they
They
are
do
a
other-
benefit.
Yes, I think
Definitely.
the reason I mentioned beavers is that they're one of the few animals that actually change their environment, so people notice them. When the beavers arrive,
Except for
people are like,
humans, but.
well,
Yeah, right.
yes. So when they arrive in an area, people are like, oh my gosh, because they just change it. Other animals, they pass through, they have no idea they're even there. So I think
Because
it just felt like our approach has been, which is not necessarily wrong, just to, okay, there's a beaver thing going on, let's take a look. Okay, we're either gonna do something or not do something, but as far as like a baffle or,
Right.
or in the case right now, we're just like letting it flood some of the trail.
Right.
If that's what's happening. And that is, I think that's not necessarily a bad practice in terms of like ecology and all that, but I think in terms of public managing, improving the relationship between the public and nature, that's not necessarily helping. This, a policy of like, oh, we just wait for something to go wrong and then say, yeah, it's fine. It isn't really that helpful, but having an actual, like maybe it's a page on the website that says, this is our beaver management strategy in Williston. Anytime there's beaver activity, here's the steps we take. Here's what determines whether.
Well, I think we already have that.
Yeah,
we
we
just
sort of
went
did
through
it,
and
we did it
kind
on
of
like
did
an
that.
ad hoc basis for that specific instance, so
Right.
maybe we just take that and say, when we have beaver activity, Pembroke or Mud Pond or wherever, here are the 3 points.
Right.
You
Yeah,
know, most of those points lead to just leave the beavers alone.
Right. I mean, the town actually has a policy that we worked on that says unless the beavers are posing a threat to a trail or a road or, and that's on town.
Yeah,
Town.
so a
Significant
highway
infrastructure.
or like a culvert or something like that where. You know, I think like, you know, being able to hike, you know, right around Mud Pond is amazing. But I don't know if it's critical to people, that they're able to do
Right.
that all times of the year. Whereas being able to drive up North Williston Road is critical at all times of the year.
That's true.
Yeah,
So I just wanted to make a comment
Yeah.
saying that, you know, people and beavers can live together. And I did go to went to a workshop recently with the guy down in, does the beaver deceivers, and, you know, it really, you know, it's amazing how people and beavers can live together, so, and they do provide a benefit.
Absolutely.
To help flood.
Ecosystem services.
Yeah.
All right, any other questions, comments on these, whatever it is, 12.2, stream restoration,
no,
12.3, water quality monitoring, we talked about this a little bit.
during this period, it's going to come back. So I think it was what, 5 years or something they said to wait, so.
yeah.
Yep,
They will for sure resume.
I think, it makes me all warm and fuzzy to see that the comments about how we should test all the rivers and streams. However, it is expensive, and I think it would be best to develop a goal for, like, for those monitoring efforts. And what is it that we want to, what is the information we want to get out of it? Is it changes, to measure changes in phosphorus concentrations? Is it just to look at E. coli levels for recreation? Is there some other thing?
What do you, in your professional opinion, what would you imagine that like Williston should be focusing on?
For Williston, I guess I would, it depends on the river. For Allenbrook, it spans the whole town, so there would be, you know, all different types of land uses. So there's agriculture, there's residential, there's a little bit of industrial as it passes through Industrial Avenue, and all of that over there. So, you know, it's already, Allenbrook's already listed for impairment for stormwater and I think E. coli. So those would be two logical pieces that or elements to look at. Phosphorus remains an issue for the Winooski River and Lake Champlain, obviously. But I guess, so those are fairly straightforward monitoring pieces. But you know, there's other things we could think about, which would be if there's other contaminants. When you get into other contaminants, and when you get into certain things like looking at, not that we would look at PCBs, but that's just all my fuzzy brain can come up with at the moment. Things like that, it can get expensive. And if there's a concern that there's something in the river, or that there's a source rather to the river, then certainly explore ways to look at it. But I guess at the most basic level, measuring flows, particularly for Allenbrook and phosphorus concentrations and E. coli like we used to do would be a reasonable starting point.
So
For
flows,
Alpha.
phosphorus, E. coli.
Yeah, that's what we were doing when the monitoring program closed out. Is the Chittenden County Stream Team still doing that stuff? They were a couple of years ago. And then for Muddy, I'm not as familiar with the issues on Muddy Brook and Suffolk Brook. So we would have to look into those too, and whatever South Burlington is doing with Muddy Brook. There's another reference to Johnny Brook too. I know nothing about that tributary. I don't even know where it flows. Reference.
I feel like most of it is in Richmond, right?
Yeah.
Like because it's on Johnny Brook, it crosses like Johnny Brook Road and connects to those mountain
Yeah.
bike trails that are on private land, like when we were talking about the parking a couple of meetings ago. I like how much of it is in Williston.
Less than 100 acres.
Yeah.
So not very
Yeah.
much.
I mean, it is there. I don't know if it's like, I don't know that means it's like bad for us to think about. I just like, when I think about it, I think about Richmond.
Yeah, well, Terry just shared that she owns most of those 100 acres on Johnny Brook. She'll take care of that.
So.
All right, it's on you.
When you get the land donated to the town, you can start worrying about it.
Well, wait, so is there long-term data from that, like from when there was annual data collected, was there data collected on Johnny Brook?
No,
No, okay,
because it's so tiny, it's, in Williston, it's a little trickle, it's.
Yeah.
Nothing.
Yeah, the only long-term data that I'm aware of that the town has collected is on Allen Brook. Doesn't mean that it hasn't been collected somewhere else, but that's all I'm aware of, and obviously the state, doing their monitoring work on the Wadusky River itself.
right. So I know that Eric and I had made this point a few times when we were talking about that program, but I've been involved in a couple of projects where long-term data sets that were collected like with no particular goal when it started ended up being really useful like 20 and 30 years later. And like the example that I think I've shared in the past is like NPS starting their inventory and monitoring program, and then like 20 and 30 years later using it to like look at questions that they couldn't have imagined when they first implemented it. And so like
NPS being the National Park Service.
yes, thank you.
Yeah.
And like I was involved with doing some analysis at the 30-year mark of that program, and like when they started it, they had no idea what they were going to do with that data. And then it's like demonstrated a lot of changes in the park related to overcrowding and climate change, and just like became really useful. And there was no way of knowing at the beginning which points were going to be useful or in what way. And so like to the extent that it's possible for us to focus on the places that we already have a history of data and like continuing that set, even if it's like missing a few years, I think we have no way of knowing if like sometime down the road it might be useful to have a continuous block of data. That's my, yeah, I know I've said it before, but I think it bears saying again.
The stream monitoring through Rethink Runoff, which I guess the stream team is part of, looks like they're currently monitoring pretty much everything that's impaired in the area except in Chittenden County, except for Albrook.
Okay.
But they only do monitoring in the summer. That's another.
So I wonder how Williston or the Allenbrook fell off the.
I think we were doing it
Radar.
through a different method through the.
Oh, the LaRose.
We were paying them at one point. I thought we paid them Rethink Runoff or Stream Team or whatever they were called to collect the samples and truck them down to.
Yeah, I think
right.
we did. I think we did. Yeah.
Was that after the La Rosa?
No, that was while the Rosa program was still in place, but rather than using Williston staff time to do it,
Yeah.
we paid them to do it.
I would support that, Kim, that we should be resuming monitoring so that we can add to the data set that we have, even though it's gonna be missing 3 years or 4 years or something like that.
Or like prioritizing, maybe the language is prioritizing. You said it was just Allenbrook, Eric.
For that the town has been monitoring, yes. It's possible that South Burlington is monitoring Muddy Brook, I don't know, or Rethink Runoff is.
Yeah, they are. It says they are.
And so, you know, it could be just a conversation, as simple as having a conversation with Rethink Runoff folks and asking them what it would take to add Allenbrook to their monitoring program. Would it take an investment of $5,000 a year? Or something like that, or, you know, it's worth a conversation, I guess.
So would it be worth looking into creating a volunteer group like Adopt a Trail to do stream testing? Or is that?
Yeah, that's what, I think it was the last iteration of the La Rosa program when that was running, was we had some volunteers or one person who was volunteering their time to go out and collect the samples, I think.
Cause I know that's how they do the cyanobacteria, pretty much, a
Yeah.
lot of volunteers
Yes,
through Lake Champlain.
yep. Yeah, it's worth exploring that. The challenge is you have to get the water quality samples to the lab, which is now down, all the way down in Randolph. Which is why it would be worth talking with the Rethink Runoff program, because they presumably already have an approach to do that, to get that shuttle.
And there's like Priority Express and
Yeah.
there's also people that just 1 hour away.
Another challenge from the past was in dealing with the data, how to understand it and how to, you know, display it. And because we just got gobs of data that many of us, even people knowledgeable about that type of data, had issues and with understanding what they mean.
Right. Yeah. At one point, we were gonna hire Fitzgerald, or we did hire Fitzgerald
Yes.
Environmental, but that was like 10 years ago now. We were trying to get some students in one of the classes, we never really successful with that.
Yeah.
Anyway, all that goes to say, I think it's worth keeping what we have in the town plan and maybe we can tweak the language a little bit to strengthen the need for the monitoring. Okay, Lake Iroquois. So more on monitoring, including septics and invasives.
Was there,
Yep.
so I just was reading that, once a month, there's a meeting of the Lake Iroquois
Lake Iroquois Association.
Association, right, and there's somebody from DPW that goes and represents town of Williston.
Mhm.
And is that Bruce? Do we
I
know?
imagine it's a stormwater person.
I mean, I looked on their website yesterday when I was reading this, and it doesn't look like they've met since 2020.
Oh,
Wow.
oh, I didn't see
Oh, I'm
that.
sure they have.
Yeah, that
Wow,
must.
They
yeah.
must just have the updated.
Yeah, with the
ones.
invasive issues.
Yeah, they've been doing so much work. They must have
Yeah.
been meeting and just not keeping it because they've been,
Yeah.
it seems like just from the newspaper, they've been so active.
Yeah, they had that whole herbicide treatment in Lake Iroquois 2 years ago. So
And like won an award as a result of its success. I feel like that was like last summer.
maybe, yeah, so like they posted their fall newsletter in October, so they're doing something.
So they're just not updating the
Yeah,
website. Supposedly, I think it said the first Monday of every month they meet here. In this room.
here? Oh,
Yeah,
okay,
just be interesting to see what, what comes out of those meetings.
yeah, that's an interesting point, Terry, we could build up a stronger connection with that group. If we know who the town representative is, we could get some sort of regular update from that person, whether it's quarterly or ad hoc.
In my memory, we did have somebody come in and talk with us as a group before the herbicide treatment, didn't we? Like, didn't we have like a couple check-ins with someone who?
Yeah.
Meg.
Yeah, we definitely did, yeah. They were looking for our support, a letter of recommendation or something prior to that work.
Yeah, those were very, that we did, you're right, and those were very topic specific. Opportunistic, I guess, and I'm thinking more like, kind of like what we have with the Winooski Valley Park District and a more regular, this general check-in. Here's what we're up to, here's our priorities for this year, here's our budget, stuff like that, because the town does contribute to the Lake Erie Recreation District, not necessarily to the association, but we are members of the Recreation District. And maybe that's what you're looking at, Simon. I just looked up Lake Erie Association, not the Recreation District.
Oh, good point. So one thing is like the private homeowners and one is like a public organization.
Oh, they take care of the trails and the boat launch, maybe, I think,
Yeah, and the beach.
the beach, right?
Yeah, I don't know. So that could be, that's definitely, I think, a good idea to look at for the town plan is to strengthen our relationship with both of those organizations, particularly the Recreation District, since we contribute funding to it. But Lake Erie Association as well. All right, we have 2 minutes left, and I promised Kim that I would save 2 minutes for her on our agenda. Are there other, we can pick this up next time. Is there anything else that folks really want to highlight today or comfortable wrapping this up next time? The flood resilience, there's quite a bit in there, and stewardship. There was not quite as much on groundwater and source water protection in my mind. But.
Yeah, I agree. We'll take it up next time.
Okay, all right. Kim, floor is yours.
Thank you. So I'm really excited. This is tangentially related to WCC, but I think that it could have some implications. It's possible Gary already knows this. I don't know. But I'm really excited to tell you all that starting January 8th, I will be Associate Professor of Parks, Recreation, and Tourism in the Rubenstein School at UVM. So I won't be ferry commuting anymore. I'll have a lot more flexibility in the mornings to like actually come in person. And when we have like parks and recreation related projects, I'll have access to UVM graduate students and undergraduate students and be teaching classes in there. And just so everybody knows.
Congratulations.
Yes.
Thank you.
Let's hope we're ready for all upcoming action items.
Yeah. I'm getting like a lot of time back every week by not commuting to Plattsburgh, so it'll be exciting. But also just like UVM has a PRT program, so there will be PRT students that I think it will be cool to connect with WCC initiatives and projects and things like that.
What's PRT? Parks,
Recreation, Tourism.
Right. Gotta work that acronym into my.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Well, that's awesome. Congratulations.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Yes, that's great.
10 years or whatever that you were at SUNY, that you and I never managed to carpool once up to the fair.
I know. It's like really challenging.
Yeah.
But
I can even carpool my own coworkers.
I know. Well, I just had an email from a colleague who lives in Richmond to see if we could like align schedules at all in like the next few days. And like, we can't even like pull that together. And like, we're actually going physically to the same building. Like, I don't know.
All right. Well, cool. Congrats, Kim.
Thanks.
And I think that will do it for today. Our next meeting is when? December 20th? Is that what I said?
Yeah.
Yeah,
That looks
All
right.
Yeah,
Looks
I'm
good
leaving
to
the
me.
19th, so I don't have my computer with me. Hopefully by then I can set it up.
And
Alright.
I just want to say
And-
I have a family commitment for the first night of Hanukkah tomorrow, but have a great night tomorrow at Wild About Williston. I won't be able to make
That
it.
reminds me, David, you had potentially ball jars we could use. Maybe we could get them from you before tomorrow night if you
Do
want
you
to be
still
there.
need them?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think so. Somewhere in the flotsam and jetsam of the renovation project, I could probably pull some out. If you want to
If
swing
it's-
by.
If that's a big lift for you, David, I have a bunch too. I can.
Yeah, we're basically just looking for jelly jar sized ball jars or, mason jars, whatever that could be used for people to take refreshments. And
Yeah,
just
I have a plastic container in the basement. If you want to swing by the house, you can email me. I'll send you my address or something.
Okay. Sounds good.
Okay, sure.
Great. Bye,
All right.
everyone.
Cool, thanks everyone. Have a good day.
Thank you.